The Weakling. The training hall of Korak's station sat in permanent silence, as it should, a cathedral of war built to break the weak and forge the lethal. Commander Veltris had spent 40 cycles watching recruits crumble under its weight, both literal and psychological. The station's artificial gravity held steady at 2.3 standard, enough to make most species crawl on their bellies within hours. Today, 17 new recruits stood before him. 16 of them trembled. One did not. The human female stood at the back of the formation, barely tall enough to see over the Krethian warrior in front of her. Her name, according to the registration file, was Commander Mira Chen, formerly of Earth's Outer Rim Defense Fleet. Formerly. Interesting word, that. Veltris let his 4 eyes sweep across the group, his mandibles clicking in calculated rhythm. The sound alone made 3 recruits flinch. "You are here," he began, his voice echoing off the obsidian walls, "because you believe you are warriors. You are wrong. You are meat, breathing, trembling meat that I will either transform into weapons or discard into the recycling vats." The Krethian warrior puffed his chest. The 2 Selvari scouts exchanged nervous glances. The human, Mira Chen, simply watched, her expression unreadable, her posture relaxed in a way that seemed almost insulting. Veltris noticed. "You," he pointed one clawed finger at her, "human, step forward." She moved through the crowd with an economy of motion that seemed almost mechanical. No wasted energy, no hesitation. She stopped exactly 2 meters from him, parade ground precision, and met his gaze without blinking. Something cold settled in Veltris's stomach. He ignored it. "Your species has attempted our program 73 times, he announced, loud enough for everyone to hear. 73 humans have entered this station seeking certification. Do you know how many have succeeded?" "0. Her voice was calm, quiet, almost gentle. Laughter rippled through the other recruits. The Krethian warrior snorted in open contempt. 0, Veltris confirmed, allowing himself a smile that showed too many teeth. "Your kind breaks too easily, human. Your bones are fragile, your muscles atrophy under sustained gravity stress, and your pain tolerance is laughably low. Why should I waste resources on you?" She tilted her head slightly, considering the question as if he had asked about the weather. "Permission to demonstrate, Commander?" More laughter. The Selvari scouts were now openly mocking her with chittering sounds their species made when amused. Veltris gestured toward the central platform where a standard gravity calibration pillar stood, a simple test of physical capability. Walk to the pillar, touch it, walk back. At 2.3 standard, most new recruits needed 3 attempts. "Proceed," he said, already anticipating the entertainment. Mira Chen walked toward the pillar. And that was when Instructor Keth, standing at the monitoring station, made a sound Veltris had never heard him make before. "Fear." "Commander," Keth's voice cracked. "Her bioscan, there is something on her body, on her shoulder, her legs, her spine. Metal bands, heavy ones." Veltris frowned. "Jewelry is not prohibited." "Not jewelry, sir." Keth's scales had gone pale. "According to these readings, she is carrying approximately 40 kilos of additional weight, distributed across her body." 40 kilos in 2.3 standard. That meant she was experiencing an effective weight nearly double what anyone else in the room was feeling. Had been experiencing it since she walked in. Veltris looked at the human again, really looked this time. She reached the pillar, touched it, turned around. She was not even breathing hard. "Commander," she said, walking back with that same terrible economy of motion, "I noticed your gravity is set rather low. Is this the orientation level, or will the real training begin soon?" The room went absolutely silent. Veltris felt his hearts, all three of them, skip a beat. On her shoulder, visible now beneath the thin fabric of her training suit, a thick metal band caught the light, and inscribed on its surface in human script were words that Veltris did not yet understand, but would soon learn to fear. The inscription read, "Limiter active, level 1 of 6.
The test. 3 days passed. 3 days of training exercises designed to push recruits to their breaking point. 3 days of watching the human female perform every task with mechanical precision, never excelling, never failing, always finishing exactly in the middle of the pack. Veltris watched her like a predator watches something it cannot yet identify as prey or threat. She ran the endurance courses at a steady pace, while Crethians collapsed and Salvari scouts vomited from gravity sickness. She completed the combat drills with textbook accuracy, never flashy, never impressive, just consistent. Too consistent. On the third night, Veltris found Instructor Keth in the monitoring room, surrounded by holographic displays of bioscan data, his scale still carrying that pale undertone of unease. "Report," Veltris demanded. Keth did not look away from the screens. "I have been analyzing her performance metrics, Commander. Every drill, every exercise, every recorded second of her activity. And she is holding back." Veltris moved closer to the displays. "Explain." "Her heart rate never exceeds 40% of estimated maximum capacity. Her muscle exertion readings suggest she is using approximately 1/3 of her available strength at any given time. Her reaction speed during combat drills shows a deliberate half-second delay before each response." Keth finally turned to face him. "Commander, she is not struggling with our training. She is pretending to struggle, and she is doing it perfectly enough that I only noticed because I was looking for anomalies." Veltris stared at the data streams flowing across the displays, charts and graphs that told a story he did not want to believe. "The gravity bands," he said slowly. "Still active, all 6 of them. Combined with the station's 2.3 standard, she is operating under a personal gravitational load of approximately 4.7 standard. 4.7 standard. The Crethians, the physically strongest species in the current class, had required medical intervention at 3.1 standard. The station's maximum setting, used only for final certification tests, was 3.5 standard. This human was casually training at 4.7 while pretending to be average. "Why?" Veltris asked, the word coming out as almost a whisper. "I do not know," Keth admitted. "But, Commander, there is more." He pulled up a new display, this one showing the human's registered background information, alongside a series of flagged intelligence reports. Mira Chen, former commander of Earth's Outer Rim Defense Fleet, resigned from service 18 months ago following something called the Nexus Incident. All details classified at the highest level of human military security. "Can you access the classified files?" "No, but I found references to it in intercepted communications between human military officials." Keth's voice dropped. "Commander, the Nexus system contained a human colony of 12 million people. After the incident, it contained 0. Veltris felt cold spread through his carapace. "She wiped out a colony?" "No,
According to the fragments I found, she saved the colonies in 7 neighboring systems. Nexus was, and I quote, an acceptable loss, end quote. 12 million people, an acceptable loss. Veltris looked at the hollow image of Mira Chen, her calm face, her unreadable eyes, those metal bands visible on her shoulder and neck. What kind of soldier views 12 million deaths as acceptable? The kind that prevented 12 billion deaths in the surrounding systems, Kath answered quietly. The kind that made a choice no one else would make and then walked away from everything because of it. The monitoring room fell silent except for the hum of equipment. Tomorrow is the combat evaluation. Live sparring. Recruits paired randomly. Yes, Commander. Make sure her pairing is not random. Put her against Thrax. Keth's scales flickered in surprise. Thrax was their most aggressive recruit, a Voranti male with a verified kill count in the triple digits and a temper that made him dangerous even to instructors. Commander, if she is what the data suggests. If she is what the data suggests, then Thrax will reveal it. And if she is not, then we lose a human recruit and gain valuable information about human deception capabilities. He turned toward the door. Either way, tomorrow we learn the truth. The next morning, 16 recruits gathered in the combat arena, a circular platform of reinforced alloy surrounded by observation galleries. The gravity had been increased to 2.7 standard for the evaluation. Mira Chen stood at the edge of the platform, still wearing those metal bands, still maintaining that impossibly calm expression. Across from her, Thrax rolled his massive shoulders, his Voranthi scales already flushed with the aggressive coloration of his species' combat state. He stood nearly 3 meters tall, his arms thick as tree trunks, his claws capable of shearing through starship hull plating. "Human," Thrax growled, his voice like grinding stone. "I am going to enjoy this." Mira looked up at him. "I apologize in advance," she said quietly. Thrax laughed, a booming sound that echoed off the arena walls. The other recruits joined in, even some of the instructors. Veltris did not laugh. He watched. The starting signal sounded. Thrax charged, 300 kilograms of Voranthi fury moving with surprising speed, his claws raised for a devastating overhead strike. Mira did not move. She simply reached up to her shoulder, to the metal band visible beneath her training suit, and touched a small release mechanism. The band clicked open and fell. The arena floor cracked beneath it. Not a small crack, a spider web of fractures spreading outward from the point of impact. Reinforced alloy that was rated to withstand orbital bombardment, now showing damage from a single piece of metal. Thrax's charge faltered. His feet stuttered. His eyes went wide. The human was already moving.
The breaking point. Time slowed down for Veltris. He watched Thrax's claws sweep through empty air, watched the massive Voranthi warrior stumble forward from his own momentum, watched Mira Chen appear behind him with a movement so fast it seemed like teleportation. Her hand pressed against Thrax's lower back, against the nerve cluster that controlled Voranthi motor function. Thrax crashed to the floor like a collapsing building. He was not unconscious, he was not injured, he simply could not move anything below his neck. The arena fell into absolute silence. Mira Chen stepped back, her breathing still calm, her expression still unreadable, and she knelt to pick up the fallen gravity band. She did not put it back on. Instead, she hooked it to her belt, where it hung like a trophy.
or a warning. "Commander Veltris," she said, and her voice carried clearly through the silent arena. "I believe my opponent is disabled. Is the match concluded?" Veltris found that his voice had abandoned him. He nodded instead. She bowed slightly, a human gesture of respect, and walked off the platform. The other recruits pressed themselves against the walls as she passed. 3 hours later, Thrax regained motor function. According to the medical staff, the precise nerve strike she had used caused temporary synaptic disruption without any permanent damage. It was, the chief medic noted with barely concealed awe, the single most perfectly calibrated attack he had ever seen delivered to a Veronthi body. She had not hurt Thrax, she had simply turned him off. Veltris found her in the training yard that evening, alone, running through what appeared to be a series of stretching exercises. The second gravity band, the one from her neck, now hung beside the first on her belt. She had removed another limiter, without permission, without announcement, without any apparent effort. "Commander," Veltris said as he approached. "Commander," she replied, without stopping her exercises. "The match this morning was supposed to reveal your capabilities. Did it?" Veltris considered the question. What had he actually learned? That she was fast, strong, and possessed knowledge of alien physiology, suggesting extensive combat experience. What he had not learned was how fast, how strong, and exactly how extensive. "The Nexus incident," he said, watching for her reaction. She stopped moving. For the first time since her arrival, something flickered across her face. Pain, old, deep, and carefully contained. "That is classified," she said. "I have sources, fragments, 12 million dead, 12 billion saved. You made a choice that haunts you, and then you walked away from your command." She turned to face him fully, and Veltris noticed that her hands had curled into fists. "Ask your question, Commander." "Why are you here? You could have hidden on any backwater planet in the galaxy. You could have drunk yourself to death like most soldiers with your kind of weight on their souls. Instead, you came to the most brutal training program in the sector, wearing gravity limiters that would kill most species, pretending to be average. Why?" She was quiet for a long moment. "Because pretending to be average is the only thing that keeps me sane. Because if I stop holding back, I do not know if I can start again." Veltris felt something he rarely felt around recruits, genuine unease. "Those limiters," he said, pointing to the bands on her belt. "How many are you wearing now?" 4, down from 6. And when you had 6 active, you were matching our 2.3 standard gravity plus 40 additional kilograms. Approximately 4.7 standard, yes. Veltris did the mathematics. If removing 2 limiters had made her fast enough to disable Thrax before he could blink, and she still had 4 remaining, what is your actual gravity tolerance, your maximum? She did not answer immediately. Her gaze drifted to something beyond him, beyond the walls of the training yard, perhaps beyond the planet itself. The Nexus system had a dying star. When it started to go supernova, the gravitational fluctuations created localized zones of extreme density. Ships could not reach the colonies because the approach vectors passed through areas where gravity exceeded 15 standard. Veltris's heart stopped. 15 standard. That was not combat gravity. That was not even punishment gravity. That was physics experiment gravity. That was watch your skeletal structure compress gravity. "Your ships could not reach them," he said slowly. "But someone did." Mira Chen reached up and touched the 3rd limiter, the one wrapped around her left wrist. I did not have this band active when I went in. I did not need it. Click. The band fell away. The ground beneath her feet groaned. The training yard's surface, rated for heavy combat machinery, cracked in a perfect circle around her position. 3 limiters remaining, she said, and her voice had changed, deeper, heavier, carrying a weight that was not entirely physical. I can remove 1 more before things become dangerous for the people around me. Veltris took an involuntary step backward. Define dangerous. She looked at him, and for just a moment he saw it. Behind those calm eyes was something vast and terrifying, something that had walked through gravitational forces strong enough to crush starships, something that had chosen to carry the death of 12 million souls in order to save 12 billion more. "Commander," she said, and now her voice was carrying weight that wasn't entirely physical. "There's a reason humans call soldiers like me a special name." "What name?" She smiled. It was not a comforting expression. "We do not have a word for it in common tongue, but the closest translation would be..." A siren cut through the air. Emergency alert. Attack warning. Both of them turned toward the main complex, where smoke was already beginning to rise, where the sounds of weapons fire echoed through the mountain air. "Raid," Veltris snarled. "The Crimson Hand. They've been targeting training facilities across the sector." The Crimson Hand, mercenary slavers, notorious for their brutality and their complete disregard for galactic law. They'd hit 4 training stations in the past cycle, killing instructors and selling recruits to the flesh markets. "How many?" Mira asked. Veltris checked his tactical display. 200 combatants, heavy armor, air support. They're already inside the main compound. He started running toward the complex, already knowing it was hopeless. They had 17 recruits, 3 instructors, and minimal weapons, against 200 criminals with military equipment. They were going to die. "Commander!" He stopped and turned. Mira Chen was standing exactly where he had left her, the 3 remaining bands glinting on her body, her expression shifting from calm to something else entirely. Something cold. "Get the recruits to the emergency bunkers," she said. "Seal the doors. Do not open them for anything." "What are you—" "I am going to handle this." She reached up to the 4th limiter, the band wrapped around her torso. "You cannot fight 200 armed—" "Commander," her voice cut through his protest like a blade. "The translator cannot handle the word I mentioned earlier, the name we give soldiers who survive what I survived." She unclasped the 4th band. It fell. The ground didn't just crack this time, it cratered. Mira Chen stood at the center of a 3-meter depression of shattered stone, and the very air around her seemed heavier, denser, as if reality itself was bending to accommodate her presence. "The closest translation," she continued, her voice now resonant with something that made Veltris's bones ache. "Gravity Walker and Commander." She started walking toward the burning compound. "You have never seen what a gravity walker does when she stops holding back." The gravity walker. The Crimson Hand had taken the main compound in under 4 minutes. Their leader, a scarred Varanthi named Cross, surveyed his prizes with satisfaction. 43 captured personnel, 17 recruits worth significant credits on the slave markets, 3 instructors who might be ransomed or, if negotiations failed, made examples of. His raiders moved through the complex with practiced efficiency, securing doorways, disabling communications, and preparing for extraction. They had done this a dozen times before. The pattern was always the same: resistance, suppression, profit. "Sir," one of his scouts reported, "we have a problem with the head count." Cross turned. "Explain."
The station manifest shows 18 recruits. We only have 17. Then find the missing one. That is the problem, sir. According to thermal imaging, she is already outside, coming this way, alone. Cross laughed. One recruit? Send a squad. Make it quick. He turned back to organizing the captives, already calculating the profit margins in his head. 30 seconds later, his communications officer looked up from her console with confusion. Sir, the squad is not responding. Equipment malfunction? I do not know. Their life signs have not disappeared. They are all alive. She tapped the display. Their heart rates have dropped to resting levels, all of them, simultaneously. Cross felt the first flicker of unease. Send another squad. This time he watched on the tactical display. 10 red dots representing his raiders moving toward a single blue dot representing the missing recruit. The dots converged, and then all 10 red dots stopped moving. Still alive, still broadcasting life signs, but motionless. What is happening out there? Cross demanded. Before anyone could answer, the main doors of the compound exploded inward. Not from weapons fire, not from explosives, they simply crumpled, as if something impossibly heavy had pressed against them, as if gravity itself had decided to fold them like paper. Through the twisted remains of the doorframe walked a human female. She was small by galactic standards, short, slender, wearing standard recruit training gear, with 2 metal bands still visible on her body. Behind her, the ground cracked with every step she took. Cross had seen many things in his centuries of raiding. He had fought Krethian berserkers and Selvari assassins. He had traded fire with military frigates and survived vacuum exposure. He had never seen anything like this. "Good evening," the human said, and her voice seemed to come from everywhere at once, resonant and heavy. "I am going to give you one opportunity. Release your captives, leave this station, never return." Cross found his courage, or what passed for it. Kill her. 40 weapons fired simultaneously. Not a single shot hit. Later, witnesses would describe what happened next as impossible. The human did not dodge, she did not take cover. She simply moved, and the space where she had been standing compressed, plasma bolts and kinetic rounds curving away from her as if deflected by invisible barriers. Gravity lensing, the station physicist would later explain with trembling hands. She was generating localized gravitational fields strong enough to bend the trajectories of incoming projectiles. By the time the raiders finished their first volley, she was already among them. What followed was not a fight, it was a lesson. She did not use weapons, she did not need to. Every touch was precise, surgical, targeting nerve clusters and pressure points that disabled without killing. Raiders dropped around her like puppets with cut strings, alive but completely incapacitated. Cross watched in horror as his 200 fighters were reduced to groaning heaps in under 3 minutes. "You," the human said, walking toward him with those terrible, deliberate steps. "You are the leader." Cross raised his weapon with shaking hands. "Stay back." She did not stay back. She reached up and touched the 5th limiter, the wrap around her right thigh. "I have removed 4 of my 6 limiters tonight. Each one increases my effective gravitational resistance by approximately 2.8 standard. Right now, my body is experiencing gravity levels that would crush most starship hulls." Click. The ground did not just crack, it shattered. Cross found himself stumbling backward as waves of pressure emanated from her position, as the air itself grew thick and heavy. "1 limiter remaining," she continued, and now her voice carried harmonics that made his teeth ache. When I remove it, the gravitational field around my body will reach approximately 12 standard. Everything within 10 meters will be pulled toward me with enough force to cause structural collapse. She was now 5 meters away. I give you this information, she said, so you understand exactly how serious I am when I tell you what comes next. Cross dropped his weapon. His crew was down. His plan was ruined. He had one option left. What do you want? The Crimson Hand has hit 4 training stations this cycle. You have sold recruits and instructors to slave markets across 3 sectors. You will tell me where those markets are. You will provide the names of every buyer, and you will never, ever harm another training facility again. And if I refuse? She touched the final limiter. Then I remove this, and we see how your body handles 12 standard gravity from point-blank range. Cross looked into her eyes. He saw nothing there but absolute certainty. No anger, no vengeance, just cold, terrible purpose. I will talk, he whispered. She nodded, and for just a moment, something that might have been relief flickered across her face. Something that suggested even gravity walkers had limits they feared to cross. An hour later, Veltris emerged from the emergency bunkers to find the compound secured, the raiders neutralized, and Mira Chen sitting alone in the training yard. She had put all 6 limiters back on. Her hands were trembling. "Commander," she said without looking up, "I apologize for the property damage. I will arrange payment." Veltris sat down beside her. He said nothing for a long moment. "The Nexus incident," he said finally. "You did not just walk through 15 standard gravity to reach those colonies. You did something else, something that cost 12 million lives but saved 12 billion. She was quiet. "What did you do?" She looked up at the stars, her face tired, her eyes carrying weight that had nothing to do with gravity. The supernova was going to consume 8 systems. The gravitational cascade was building toward a chain reaction that would have created a sector-wide extinction event. The only way to stop it was to redirect the blast. Redirect how? I removed all my limiters. I generated a gravitational field strong enough to alter the trajectory of a dying star. I pulled the explosion toward Nexus instead of toward the populated systems. Veltris felt his blood run cold. You redirected a supernova. I killed 12 million people to save 12 billion. I made the choice that no one else would make. And then I put my limiters back on and walked away because I couldn't trust myself with that power anymore. She looked at him directly. "Now you know what a gravity walker really is, Commander, and why we wear these bands. Not to make ourselves stronger through training, but to make sure we never become monsters."
What humans really are. 3 months later, Commander Veltris stood before the Galactic Security Council. The chamber was vast, designed to intimidate representatives from across 1,000 worlds, and today every seat was filled. Species that had warred for millennia sat side by side, united by a common concern: humanity. "We have read your report," the council president said, a massive, crystalline being whose voice resonated through the chamber like wind chimes. "We have verified your findings. We have reviewed the testimony." She paused. "We have also received 17 additional reports from other sectors, training facilities, combat academies, exploration vessels, all describing similar individuals, similar capabilities." Veltris nodded. "The humans call them gravity walkers. They are products of a classified program on Earth, soldiers conditioned from childhood to withstand gravitational forces that would kill any other species. The report says there are approximately 200 of them currently active." "That we know of, yes."
Silence rippled through the chamber. Commander Veltris, another council member spoke, a Crethean war leader with enough battle scars to map a planet. Your report also claims that these gravity walkers routinely operate under self-imposed limitations, that the individual you observed, this Mira Chen, was restraining 90% of her actual capability throughout her entire time at your facility. That is correct. And that at full power, a single gravity walker can generate localized gravitational fields comparable to stellar phenomena. Also correct. The war leader leaned forward. Then explain to this council why we should not classify humanity as an existential threat and begin preparations for defensive measures. Veltris had expected this question. He had thought about it every night for 3 months, lying awake in his quarters, remembering the sight of Mira Chen trembling with her limiters reattached, remembering the grief in her voice when she spoke of Nexus. Because, he said slowly, the gravity walkers are not weapons, they are weighted. Confusion rippled through the chamber. Explain, the president demanded. The limiters they wear are not just physical restraints, they are psychological anchors. The gravity walkers choose to limit themselves because they understand better than anyone what happens when power goes unchecked. He pulled up a holographic display showing Mira Chen's psychological profile. This woman redirected a supernova. She has the power to collapse buildings with her presence, to bend the trajectory of weapons fire, to generate gravitational forces that would reduce most species to paste. And she spent 3 months at my training facility pretending to be average because she was afraid of what she might become if she stopped pretending. The chamber was silent. Humanity did not create the gravity walkers to conquer. They created them to protect, and then they made them wear limiters not because they could not trust them, but because the walkers asked to be limited. They wanted the weight. They needed it. He thought of Mira's words on that night in the training yard. The humans have a saying, he continued, with great power comes great responsibility. Their gravity walkers have taken that further. They believe that with ultimate power comes ultimate restraint. They carry their limiters as reminders, as burdens, as penance for the terrible choices their power forces them to make. The president considered this for a long moment. And if one of them decides to stop being restrained? Veltris smiled grimly. Then we should hope they are on our side, because Mira Chen took down 200 armed raiders in 3 minutes with 1 limiter still active. I do not want to imagine what would happen if one of them truly let go. The council deliberated for hours. In the end, they reached a decision that would be remembered throughout galactic history. Humanity would not be classified as a threat. Instead, they would be classified as something the galaxy had never created before. Guardians. Not because they were the strongest species, though the gravity walkers certainly were. Not because they had the most advanced technology or the largest military, but because they were the only species that had looked at ultimate power and voluntarily chosen to chain it. The only species that produced individuals who would carry the weight of stars on their shoulders and never complain. The only species that understood that true strength was not about what you could do, but about what you chose not to do. On a training station carved into the mountains of Corax Prime, Mira Chen completed her certification. She had worn all 6 limiters throughout the final examination. She had performed exactly at the average level, neither excelling nor failing, maintaining the careful pretense that kept her anchored to humanity. Veltris handed her the certification chip personally. "What will you do now?" he asked. She considered the question with that same unreadable expression.